Welcome to the Live by Heart Today show number 86. This is a show designed to help you navigate change, uncertainty, and the world we found ourselves in. We'll talk a little bit about science. We'll talk a little bit about how our body works, a little bit about intuition, and we talk a lot about transformation.
Live by Heart Today is brought to you by
wearehistorically.com. Conscious Human Apparel.
Raise your vibration and energize your life with specialized Fibonacci tuning forks to deepen meditations and empower self-healing. Get your vibrational sound tools for personal enhancement at energybodytuners.com.
Hello, I'm Dawn Spiegelberg, medical intuitive and coherence coach. This show is in our pilgrimage series, and today's theme is building heart bridges. With me for today's heart-to-heart discussion is my guest, Dr. Walter, homeopath and founder of a healing method called biofocusing. Welcome, Walter.
Hi, Dawn. Good to see you again.
Thank you so much for being here. We'd like to talk about building bridges, building heart bridges, and in thinking about the idea and the concept of a bridge spans a region that may have, before the bridge, been impossible to attain, impossible to get to. So with that in mind, let's jump right in and talk about how our hearts can span space, time, and physical distance, and how they do that in communicating.
And one of my favorite sayings is that the neurons are always doing it for themselves. So a question that I'd kick off with would be to ask, what does one's heart feel like? And if you're going to be honest about that, you're going to be communicating something with yourself, and then you're going to be getting closer to the fact that you're always emitting something beyond yourself to other humans and the cosmos in general. Something's always happening. There's a process that happens whether you like it or not. There's a process that's happening whether you are in tune with it, whether you are coherent with it or not. So it's a good idea to find out more about it and get in line with it, because it's not ego-driven, it's naturally inspired. And just as the body breathes in and out, takes in the oxygen, gives off the carbon dioxide, there is a certain kind of a field which the heart emits. And if you want to go into the science of that, I think it's there to find. And thereby we pick up what others emit to us, and others pick up what we emit to them, whether we like it or not, and whether we know it or not. And I think it's quite a useful place to begin, because it's a natural bridge which is there. And so I think the more purposefully and the more mindfully, if you wish, that we cross that bridge, the better we'll get at it. Because communication is a bit of a hot potato. Bridges between people are notoriously difficult. Diplomacy is the art of doing that without ruffling feathers. But natural communication is there in terms of affection. Always has been, always will be. The heart knows it, the skin knows it, the entire body knows it, and we often are not paying that much attention to it. So that's how I would start the idea of paying attention to the bridges which are naturally created and emitted and received, crossed by the heart impulses.
Yes, the heart impulses. You're mentioning the psychophysiology that is, I'm guessing, a new and upcoming study, and that is the study of the response that the body has in relation to what's happening in the heart. Things like heart rate variability, skin conductive measurements, and muscle activity, skeletal muscle activity. These are all things that they're studying in order to see what's actually going on in the heart and measuring the heart's communication. What I find for myself is that all too often I'll hear words that someone is saying, but those words won't match what I sense is a deeper meaning or a deeper message. And I'm realizing that's what's going on in the heart.
Mm.
So they don't always match.
They don't. Hearts don't lie and plants don't lie. I think his name was Clive Baxter, was it? His surname was Baxter, but I think his first name was Clive, who did the experiments hooking up plants to lie detectors and noting the results. So yeah, nature doesn't lie, but humans have learned how to. The heart doesn't lie.
Yes.
No, we can manipulate words, but we can't really manipulate the heart. We can avoid it. We can hide it, but I don't think it's possible to manipulate it.
And so I'd love to talk about how our heart and our words can match and the effects of that.
So I'd ask the question, what would make them not match?
I've been around people whose words and their heart did not match.
And what would be the purpose thereof? Why would people not want to? Why would people prefer dishonesty to honesty? I understand that lawyers do this, but I don't want to be sued, so I won't go down that path. But
sure.
But sure, why would people not want to? And I think that people would not want to because they want to avoid discomfort. They want to avoid pain, especially wanting to avoid pain. They would want to avoid feelings that they prefer not to speak about because it's too overwhelming. That's possible. And I think that if one uses language in a facile way, and I'm thinking now particularly of religious language, which addresses big things and gets away with it anonymously, because people can prattle theology rather than speak about personal truth, theology can become complicated. Whereas if one were to say, I'm alone, I'm confused, and actually I just feel lost and I don't have answers. And then if someone had to try to communicate theological language to such an individual, how on earth, how far would it go? So I'm not against theology. I'm just thinking about a linguistic mismatch and how one could go the other way and try to say what you mean and to be heard. We've spoken before about how one can communicate in silence. But if we're going to take that a step further and say, how could we actually communicate? How could we create bridges between hearts using language rather than manipulating language for other purposes? I think one could find plenty of examples. When things are said in love, when things are said in rage, when things are said for real, rather than when things are said with an agenda. I think one had to express what one actually feels, rather than putting it aside for the sake of an agenda, some other purpose, which is more to hand. The world would be a simpler place.
I know we had a conversation and I did not speak words exactly. And it was because of the pain. There was a recent loss of an animal in our family. And you caught me on it. You said, oh, you're talking about, a species of animal. You're not talking about the specific animal that died. And yes, it was painful. And I wasn't speaking truthfully about it.
It's often difficult. Martha Beck's latest book, is it The Path of Integrity or The Way of Integrity? For a year, her decision was that for a year she would speak the truth. A lot happened in that year. It's a chapter worth reading. One decides to live like that, there will be repercussions for sure. There will be a lot of growth. Truth, growth, honest expression, authentic heart, these tend to go together.
it makes me ask why we avoid pain. The painful situations and discomfort actually can bring us closer together. It's another tie that binds, but we avoid it.
Yeah, we haven't tended to do this, have we? We've tended to be heroes rather than members of community. Who do you go to when you want to confide? Who do you go to when something needs to be trusted in being communicated and said? There's not always someone there. And to my way of thinking, it takes a very interesting decision of spirit to say that I will try to be the person who will listen. I will try to be the person in whom you can confide, because that is one huge commitment to oneself before even the other person, because it means that you have to bear the weight of integrity.
Mm-hmm. I recall in my, it must have been in my late 20s, I was struggling with something very painful. And in a moment of insight, I realized that I was the only one who truly understood what I was going through. And that had been true my whole life. Maybe that's the sudden understanding of a person whose sun sign is in Gemini, right? The twins always being together and knowing what the other one is going through. But it was a real revelation for me to realize, oh, I've been here the whole time. I've seen all of these experiences.
Mm.
It's been me with myself.
I would agree that the most important bridge to build first is the one with yourself.
Mm.
And I think it's a healthy thing to recognize and to do as a living human body, because the recognition of the need to do that is not always provided. We are taught to be self-disciplined. We're taught to be self-sacrificial. We are seldom taught how to speak honestly with one's own heart.
Mm-hmm.
And in the doing of that, you're going to be able to build a bridge to others.
I recall making that shift. And one of the simplest things that I did was just ask myself, what do I want in this moment? Because there was a period of time when I didn't know what I wanted, because everything had been wanted for me.
Mm.
You should do this, you should go here, you should want this other thing. And it took a little time, a little practice to decide what I wanted.
There should be much more research done about the power of decision and the power of wanting something and pursuing it. I don't mean that in the sense of achievement, but in the sense of self-knowledge. The brain's capable of a lot, and it's also capable of deciding much. But how it decides what is good for oneself, I think, is still a bit of a mystery. That remains to be uncovered. And yeah, there's a lot of moral injunction happening out there. Whether it's more Victorian or more contemporary, but there's a lot of moral injunction, and it doesn't address the heart.
No, and it doesn't have to be so imposing. One can practice by just being mindful and deciding what clothes to wear on a given day, or what to have for breakfast. What a simple decision can be, and it doesn't have to be too complex. But building on that structure allows the complex questions to be answered more readily.
Or simply.
Yes.
Or simply more readily, and to escape the formality of imposition. The heart's not a formal entity. You can't formalize the heart, no ways. So in the same sense, we could talk about the soul. These two ideas would link. But what the heart emits and what the heart receives is natural, and therefore I think simple and recognizable, and can be practicalized, but it needs a step of slowing down and noticing to do that.
I recently moved locations. I moved from the West Coast back to the Eastern board. And when discussing it with my mother and telling her that all the plans have been finalized and that we were moving, she mentioned her heart was swelling. And I was very interested to note that her heart was swelling with happiness and joy and excitement.
So if we go the other way, when the heart experiences huge chasms, which would seem to be impassable, then the question would be, how do you build bridges across that? I mean, I can remember from my own growing up how kindness addressed that. And I go back to it every time when I think of what has touched me and grown me most. It has been the kindness of people simply slowing down and saying the odd word to me, which was not any serious, huge matter of you should or you shouldn't, but just a matter of recognition. Just a moment of gentleness, a moment of recognition. And how that sense has always stayed with me. And how my own growth has depended on that. And I couldn't have done a thing to make that happen. Again, that was simply a grace coming out of nowhere, coming out of the goodness of other people's hearts, emitting what they emit. And I was fortunate to meet people who did that by choice.
And your heart received it.
It did. My heart received it, recognized it, knew it, was grateful for it, and banked it. This is the way. This is the way the bridges are built.
I'd love for people to practice receiving more.
Yes. It's often difficult. And then that's interesting because it's often overwhelming to receive. The kindness can be too much. The sense of love can be too much. The experience of grace can be too much. This is not normal. Veer away from it. Let's get back into the normal. This is more comfortable. Otherwise, the responsibility becomes yours as well. Responsibility is what you carry over the bridge, by definition.
With that, let's just take a short break and we'll be back and discuss more about bridging the heart.
Let's give a shout out to our sponsors. Thank you, We Are Historically, for making this show possible. Shop online at wearehistorically.com.
Do you know the body has the ability to heal itself? This is an amazing gift that we all really take for granted. Think about it. When you cut your finger, do you have to focus on clotting the blood? It does so automatically and with no conscious effort on your part. That's not only true for scrapes, but it's true for everything about your body. In fact, if you have a condition that your body is struggling to heal from, then it doesn't have the tools necessary to overcome it and be whole. I specialize in discovering the cause of symptoms so that the body can heal itself. Clients feel better, move better, and live better. Call, text, or email. Live by heart today.
Raise your vibration and energize your life with specialized Fibonacci tuning forks that deepen meditations and empower self-healing. Get your vibrational sound tools for personal enhancement at energybodytuners.com.
Welcome to the Live by Heart Today show. We're discussing bridging the heart. And Walter, you mentioned the responsibility that you carry over a bridge. I know that building bridges takes some effort. And there are times when someone's not willing to build a bridge because in their point of view or from their opinion, they think the other side of the bridge isn't interested in having the bridge, or they're not doing any work on this bridge.
The minute you talk like that, I think about marriage, because in the beginning, the bridge is built emotionally, physiologically, in many ways, the bridge is built. But then the crossing of that bridge on a mutual basis in years to come can be fraught with danger and is probably not always crossed with trust and with immediacy and with happiness. And we can apply that to any other kind of relationship. We can apply that to any other kind of sphere as well. If one has built a bridge, it's not yours afterwards. It belongs to anyone who might want to or not want to cross it, or blow it up, as the case may be, or charge you a bridge crossing fee. So, yeah, we need to avoid romancing the bridge. As I've mentioned before, I do think it's physiologically there. It's not just a metaphor. The heart emits and receives, and once we've established a path between our heart and others, and an ecology, if you will, of what's around us, what crosses it or doesn't cross it is a continuing process.
Mm.
And it's a process which needs care, which is, again, a tautology, because care means using the heart.
I found, with regard to bridges and the heart space, that I choose to be constant, because sometimes building the bridge isn't well received, or you may be capable of building a bridge, but another individual isn't interested in building their own bridge. They just want to use the bridge that's there, or they don't maintain their side of it. And so being clear in relationships, having a heart focus.
Mm. I mean, again, using the simplicity of the heart, because I think bridges are crossed less easily when there's an on-purpose confusion.
Mm.
Where again the agenda has got the priority and not the communication. When it's a sense of self-purpose that this is what I'm about, and that's all that I'm paying attention to, really, it becomes far more difficult to cross from heart to heart.
Mm. It makes me think of the oaths that we make, or vows that we make, and how over time things shift, and needing to change agreements or renegotiate agreements, and how perhaps we may need to be willing to abandon a bridge or just let it be and build something else.
Yeah, I think what the heart emits is more important than the bridge that was built previously, because the continuing process of what the heart area emits and what it receives is almost a liquid process. Whereas we talk about bridges as being solid things which are crossed or not crossed. I think that's what the heart communicates on a daily basis is far more liquid than that. So when you speak about oaths, vows being made, sure, these are things which have been solidified in terms of promises. But because the heart is a quick thing, a living thing, and it won't get stuck very easily, it'll move to where it does move, then it becomes that much more difficult to pin it down with words. So the kind of bridge I'm thinking about is not one which necessarily obeys some sort of a permanent fixture. It is liquid, and one needs to recognize that. So I think the process of being truthful with yourself, the process of being truthful with others, builds bridges on a daily and hourly basis. When it becomes a way of life, then you notice the bridge for what it is. And if we're going to be talking about a bridge in a real sense here, then it's convenient, it's crossable, it works. But when it becomes traditional, it's not going to be necessarily be heart-centered anymore.
Mm-hmm. I think as one develops their ability to recognize how the heart gives and receives, how their heart behaves in particular situations or with people, and we practice the noticing, the ability for us to recognize what the heart is doing and what it's capable of doing increases.
Especially in this time of Corona, I've had to ask myself the question with increasing clarity: what do I really want to say to myself about how to live in times when there's so much fear, so much mistrust, so much confusion, so much unknowingness about what's real? What do I want to say to myself? And I dig really deep to answer that, and I find interesting things. And often I find it's not even words that I want to say to myself. It's a particular kind of tone. It's a particular kind of mood that I would adhere to, that I would choose, rather than a set of articulated beliefs.
Mood and setting a particular thought pattern comes from the hypothalamus, a physical structure. So that's amazing, because most people don't think that they are capable of making a choice in that area, right? They're in a good mood or they're in a bad mood, and it all depends on external circumstances, but they don't necessarily realize that it's something that can be set. It can be a choice.
I would say it's important to know that it can be chosen.
Despite what's happening.
Despite what's happening.
Yeah, around you or outside you.
The actor comes on the stage. Before he or she begins to speak, there's an intentive mood in terms of what's going to happen next, which gives drama to the whole thing. And when the words come forth, the drama is enacted. So it's that kind of a cue which you would set for yourself in determining what you want to exude, firstly to yourself and then to others. That's crucial.
And I believe that's what I meant. I was intimating that when I was mentioning about developing my own heart messages, my own heart bridges that I was choosing. It's really fascinating. I just love to mention to people watching that developing one's attention to one's own heart and being open and understanding how to build bridges with other people and receive heart messages from them is a practice well worth the study.
I'm finding it difficult to speak about the heart anymore, because to me it becomes such a simple thing. And a heartfelt utterance is worth 1,000 books. I'm trying to remember who I learned most of this from, and I can't come up with any particular one person. So I would say that there's a coherence, there's a resonance between brain and heart, which you are fortunate to have if it comes your way. And it's, to an extent, it's a product of what you decide. And to a larger extent, it's a product of what you've grown up with, your environment, your context. If you've been blessed to grow up in a particular way, then I would say notice it and be grateful for it. And perhaps the noticing of that becomes greater when you are more open to it. So I'm not sure how that loop closes. I wouldn't want an individual to feel responsible for having an open heart. I would say become aware of how your heart opens in conjunction with what's happening around you. And similarly, be aware of what closes up your heart in connection with what's going on around you. I grew up in apartheid South Africa, and I grew up in a very gracious environment. Now, you tell me which one was which. I won't be able to tell you, but I experienced both. So I think using that as a point of departure, everybody could be able to say that I've experienced that which closes my heart, I've experienced that which opens my heart. I choose to look at the bridges within, and I choose to look at the causeways outside of me. And I choose to do the crossings as much as I can. Because in the choosing of that, I think that you promote growth, which I'd like to talk to sometime in the future, because I do think that just as plants grow, so do humans grow. And I think that what grows is the heart, indeed, even more than the intellect. So the expansion of what we're calling the human heart, I think, is necessary. It's a necessary next step for humanity. Probably more so than intellectual pursuit, and very much more so than technological pursuit. It's healthy, it's natural, and I think it could happen a lot more than it does. And I would see these conversations as being a way of examining those possibilities, because they interest me for sure.
Thank you, Dr. Walter. It's a pleasure to have you here. And I'd like to thank everyone else who's with us today. If you're watching, please let us know. We would love to hear from you. So tell us what's on your heart by leaving us a comment. For more information about how you can live by heart, please go to our website, livebyhearttoday.com. Go ahead and like and follow this page and turn on notifications. We're here on Thursdays at 4:44 Pacific time. From our heart to yours, we're creating a better tomorrow because we live by heart today.
And that concludes this portion of Live by Heart Today.
And thank you to our sponsors for making the show possible. Hooray! Thank you, We Are Historically, for your conscious human apparel. Shop online at wearehistorically.com.
Level up your life and raise your vibration with specialized Fibonacci tuning forks. Get your vibrational sound tools for your personal enhancement at energybodytuners.com.
Thank you for joining us. Have a happy always. View more episodes on our website.
There's also sometimes we exert control over the bridge.
And sometimes there's a troll under the bridge.